Hello and welcome to this introductory webinar on Zoho Projects. I'm Naveen and I handle marketing at Zoho Projects, and I'll also be your host for this webinar. This webinar is about the new version of Zoho Projects called Project 7. Zoho Projects is an online project management tool which helps you run your business online with ease. With Zoho Projects, you can plan your project, track its progress, and collaborate with your team to get things done efficiently. With over 3 million users, Zoho Projects is already being used across various business verticals. From software development to construction companies, marketing agencies to recruiting agencies have successfully completed many of their projects using Zoho Projects. Projects is a feature-rich app and might feel slightly overwhelming, but it's pretty easy to understand and use. Knowing a few basic features will help you get started. I'll take you through the basics of everything you'll need to know for setting up a project. Now let's start the demo. The homepage gives you an overview of everything that's happening across all the projects that you're a part of. You can view the tasks, milestones, timesheets, overdue work items, scheduled events, expenses, and so on. And all the widgets that you see here are completely customizable. You can rearrange them or even add new widgets if needed. And there's also a portfolio dashboard. Now this dashboard displays the project timeline Gantt, project status report, ownership report, timeline summary, client report, and so on of all the projects that you're associated with. Next is the feed. Under the feed section, there are three different tabs: feed, status, and activity stream. The feed is an automated system that populates activities in your projects. Similar to some social media feeds, you will receive updates whenever the users perform activities in the projects that you're associated with. And you also have an option to comment on these feeds and even drop attachments if necessary. And under the status tab, you'd find the status updates by all the users throughout all the projects that you are a part of. And under activity stream, the activities of all the users in a project are shown in a timeline view so that you can quickly get updated on what went on within a time span. This gives you an audit trail of the project activities. And under both statuses and feeds, you have an option to mention users or designations. We'll see how to add these designations in a bit. And you also have an option to hashtag bugs or issues. Now let's see how to add new users to the project. To do this, we'll go to the settings and manage users. There are two different types of users you can add: portal users and client users. Portal users are your employees that you would add to the projects, and client users are your clients. You can give them access to ongoing projects to let them track the progress in real time. Now to add a portal user, click on Add User. Enter a valid email address, their roles and profiles, which we will talk about next, and the rate per hour, and click on Add. Now they would receive a confirmation email from where they could join the portal. And similarly for client users, click on Add Client User, enter a valid email address, their company name, and click on Add. And there's also an option to group these users into teams. You could create multiple teams and group users based on the team. Moving on to profiles and roles. A profile defines the permissions needed to access features in the projects, and the roles define the user designation or position in an organization. Users with the same role can be assigned different profiles based on the permissions required. And the profiles admin, manager, employee, contractor, and client are default. You cannot edit these profiles or delete them, but you could clone them to create completely new ones if needed. And to create a completely new profile based on your preference, click on Add Profile and give it a name. Select if it's a user profile or a client profile. And now there are three levels of permissions in projects: the portal level permissions, project level permissions, and module level permissions. You could restrict accesses to different users based on their profiles here. You have access to disable certain features or give them complete access to all the features and projects. And once you're done setting up the profile and enabling all the permissions needed, click on Add to create the new profile. And under roles, you can create different designations to users based on the hierarchy followed in your organization. Next is the Discuss tab. This is an internal collaboration feature that lets you keep your discussions going via chat or audio-video meetings with anyone associated to the projects that you're working on. To create a new conversation, click on New Conversation, select the project that you want to have the conversation about, give it a title, and select the users that you want to involve, and click on Add. And this is how a chat room would look like. You could have all your project-related conversations right here without having to switch to a different tab. And you also have an option to create audio-video meetings. To create a new meeting, click on Schedule Meeting, select the project that you want to have the meeting about, give it a title, select the users that you want to involve, select the time and date, and click on Save. Now a notification with the meeting link would be sent to all the users that are associated to this meeting. And you could start the meeting when it's time directly from here. Moving on to Calendar. You can track all your project activities using the Calendar module. Calendar is a simple and secure way to quickly organize meetings, events, schedule appointments, and manage tasks and issues. It helps your team to easily identify days in which they are engaged so that they can plan ahead and complete work on time. All your activities here are given different color codes for easy identification. So if you want to add a new activity, click on the date, select the kind of activity that you want to add, and fill in the details and click on Save. Next is the Project section. All your active projects along with some of their basic information is displayed here. You could view the status of the task, the completion percentage, the owner, and even the start and end dates of the project. You also have access to completely customize all the columns that are on display here. You could choose the columns that you want and even rearrange them if needed. And there are different views available as well. You could select the type of projects that you want on display and even create a custom view if needed. And there's also an option to let you group all the similar projects together for easy accessibility. To create a new project, click on New Project, give it a name, assign an owner, set the start and end dates, and you also have an option to make it a strict project, meaning all the activities inside the project should strictly fall inside the date range of the project and cannot exceed them. Next, you could give it a description, assign it to a group that you want, and even select the tabs that you want on display inside the project. You also have an option to make this into a private project or a public project. If it's a private project, only the users that are a part of this project would have access to it. But if you make it into a public project, all the users in your portal would have access to the project. There are a couple of other important things here. One is the task layout and the other is the custom field. Let's see how to create a task layout and a custom field for both projects and tasks. To do that, let's go to Settings, click on Customization, and select Projects. The standard layout is the default layout of all projects. All the fields in these two sections are default. You cannot edit them. But the third section is a custom section. You could add custom fields and custom sections as per your need for each project. So these are the different type of fields that are available. Pick list, multi-select, there's a date field, a number field, a phone field, and even a URL field. To add a new field, drag it and drop it to the section that you want to add it to, and give it a name, mark it mandatory if needed, and click on Add to Layout. And if you want to remove a custom field, you could do that from here. Click on Remove and it would be removed. But all the custom fields that you've created would still be available under the Available Fields section. So in case you want to reuse a field that was previously created, you could do that from here. Once you're done, click on Add to Layout and click on Save Layout. Similarly, you could even create a completely new layout as well if needed. Click on Create Layout. You could even clone an existing layout if you need and then make minor changes if needed. And give it a name, assign the permissions and click on Create. And similarly for tasks, the standard layout is again the default layout. Now this is again similar to the project's layout. You could add custom sections and fields if necessary. Let's try to add a budget section and field and see how it works. To add a section, let's drop a section here, give it a name, and to add a new field, drag the field type and drop it here, give it a name, and click on apply, and the field is created. If you work on a lot of projects and need custom statuses, that could be done too. Click on the gear icon here, scroll to the bottom, and here's an option to add a status. Type the name of the status you need, select if it should be an open status or a closed status, and give it a color, and click on apply. Let's understand the hierarchy deployed in projects first before we look at a sample project. Your work items and goals are structured into milestones, task lists, tasks, and subtasks. A group of subtasks together form a task. A group of tasks together form a task list. And a group of task lists together form a milestone. Which means when you complete a group of subtasks, you're completing a task. When you complete a group of tasks, you're completing a task list. And similarly, when you complete a group of task lists, you're completing a milestone. Milestones can be considered as progress trackers or short-term goals in the bigger picture. The definition of this largely varies from business to business. And task lists can be considered as to-do lists, which consists of all your tasks and subtasks. Now let's look at a sample project that we have here. This project is called Donley Apartment Constructions, and this is the dashboard of the project. The dashboard of the project gives you a complete overview of what's happening inside the project. You could check the budget status, task status, issue status, project timeline, and so on. And all these widgets that you see here can be customized. You could choose to either rearrange them or pick different widgets that would suit your requirement better. Now let's look at how this project is structured. Under milestones, all the active and completed milestones of this project are listed. When we click on a milestone, it would display all the task lists that are associated to this milestone. And when we select a task list, it would display all the tasks and subtasks that are associated to this task list. Moving on to tasks. This page would display all your task lists, tasks, and subtasks. To create a new task, click on Add Task, give it a name, a description, add it to the task list that you want, select the owner, start date, end date, and click on Add. There are three different types of task views available: Classic, Plain, and Kanban. The Classic view is what we have right now. This displays all your tasks and subtasks based on their task list. And this view gives you all the information that you need about all the tasks that are on display. You could view a task's owner, status, start date, end date, completion percentage, priority, and so on. And all the columns that are here are completely customizable. You could choose to either rearrange them or select different columns based on your requirement. The plain view is pretty similar to the classic view, except that it ignores all the task lists and displays all your tasks and subtasks based on their due date. The Kanban cards are an easy and dynamic way to create and visualize your workflow. Task lists and tasks are visually arranged so every team member knows the tasks and subtasks in every task list. Tasks here could easily be moved from one task list to another by just dragging and dropping them. And there are different views that you could choose from. You could choose to view the tasks based on the status, task list, priority, or their percentage. And you could also choose what kind of tasks that you want to view. And there's also a filter option that lets you filter the kind of tasks that you want on display. Clicking on a task would take you to the task's detail page, which gives you all the information about the task. You could view the task owner, its current status, the total work hours involved, the start dates, the end dates, and even the completion percentage of the task. And if this is a high priority task, you could add a reminder to all the associated users based on the due date of the task. And if this is a task that needs to be reopened often, you could use the recurrence feature to reopen the task automatically at regular intervals. And here, you have options to comment on a task, add attachments, view all the subtasks associated to this task, enter your login hours for this task, and also view the status timeline of the task, which tracks the time taken for the task to move from one status to another. The issues module is just like your tasks module. It displays all the issues that are submitted. And you also have an option to view these in plain view or the Kanban view. And also you could filter these issues based on the status, severity, module, or classification. Moving on to reports, Gantt charts are the first on the list. A Gantt chart is the most commonly used feature in Zoho projects and project management in general. It is one of the most popular and useful ways of showing your tasks or events displayed against time. On the left of the chart, you would see a list of all activities, and along the top is a suitable timescale. Each activity is represented by a bar. The position and the length of the bar reflects the start date, duration, and the end date of all the activities. This allows you to view at a glance what the various activities are, when each activity is scheduled to begin and end, how long each activity is scheduled to last, where activities overlap with other activities and by how much, and the start and the end dates of the whole project. The red bars here represent milestones, the gray ones represent task lists, and the blue and green ones represent your tasks and subtasks respectively. And these black lines are the dependencies. There are 4 different types of dependencies in projects. The finish to start dependency, which means that the dependent task cannot begin until the parent task is finished. For instance, in a journal publishing process, the self-review of a journal cannot begin until the draft is complete by the writer. Start to start dependency. The dependent task cannot begin until the parent task has started. For instance, as the peer review of the journal starts, the manager review can also be initiated. The finish to finish dependency. A task cannot be completed until the other task is finished. For instance, error correction cannot be completed until the manager review is finished. The start to finish dependency. The dependent task cannot be completed until the parent task is about to begin. For instance, publishing the journal cannot be completed unless the journal binding process starts. You could add dependencies among 2 different tasks by dragging your mouse pointer from one task to another. And if you want to change the dependency, click on the task and select the type of dependency that you need. And if you want to add a time lag between the tasks, you could do that from here. And all the tasks that are visible here can be rearranged directly from here without you having to go back to the tasks detail page. You could change the start and the end dates of the project by dragging them or completely repositioning them. The other important feature of Gantt chart is the critical path. The critical path consists of a specific sequence of tasks that must be completed on time in order for the project to meet its deadline. It is the longest path in a chain of interdependent activities from start to finish in a project. You could enable the critical path from here. When you do so, it would highlight all the tasks that are close to the end date of the project and their dependent tasks in red. Now this would allow you to replan all your tasks and make sure that all your tasks are completed before the end date of the project. Now if you notice clearly, you would find 2 different shades given to all work items here, a darker shade and a lighter shade. The darker shade represents the completion percentage of the task. There are also 2 different Gantt views available here, the milestone Gantt and the chronology Gantt. In the milestone Gantt, all task lists and tasks are displayed based on their hierarchy in the project, whereas in the chronology Gantt, all the bars are displayed based on the order of their start date in the project. You also have an option to view all the task details directly from here, just like how you see them in the classic view of the tasks. You could resize the Gantt window to accommodate all the columns that you want on display. And there's also an option to edit these columns. You could choose to view the columns that you need and rearrange them based on your requirement. You can also choose the labels that you want to see on the Gantt chart. Here are the options that are available. You could view the start date and the end date. You could view the assignee and even the title of the task. The resource utilization reports are next. The resource utilization reports are great for managers when allocating tasks to others. It gives you a view of how balanced your team's work hours and free hours are. It helps you view at a glance if someone is fully occupied, has time to spare, or is overloaded. This also helps you to easily split work amongst your team to maintain a balance. In this view, there are 3 different colors to represent the type of workload each user has. The first one is green, which means that the user is already working on a task but has some time to spare to take up additional work. The other one's blue, which means that the user is fully occupied and does not have any time to take up additional work. And the last one's red, which means that the user is overloaded. This view not only helps managers understand how occupied their team members are, but also to reallocate work to someone else if someone is overloaded. In this case, we see that Avinash is fully occupied and has no time to spare throughout the week, whereas Chaitanya is working on one task and still has time to spare to take up additional work. But Charles is working on 3 different tasks and is overloaded. In this case, you could reallocate work from Charles to someone else directly from here without having to switch back to your tasks page. You could do that by dragging the task that you want to reassign and dropping it on the other user. Now both Chaitanya and Charles are working on 2 different tasks but still have some time to spare throughout the week. And if you're a large organization and handle a lot of tasks and users, scrolling through a huge list of users to find out which user is occupied and which user has time to spare could be a daunting task, which is where the filters feature comes in. It helps you to easily filter out the users based on their roles, their allocation type, or even their teams. There are a few other reports that are available as well. The planned versus actual reports. These reports help you identify the work progress of the user based on the difference in their planned and actual hours. You can view both the total planned hours of the user and the actual hours spent by the user in a project. The difference between the planned and actual hours indicate the progress of the project. The planned hours are calculated based on the work hours allocated for the task assigned to the user, and the actual hours are calculated based on the user's timer and timesheet entries. In this case, this user is assigned 3 different tasks, and it's planned that it would take him 94 hours to complete all his tasks. But it actually takes him only 52 hours to complete his tasks, which means that the planned here is 94 and the actual is 52. So this user took only 52 hours to complete all his tasks when the initial planning was for 94 hours. So that's a positive 42-hour difference. And these reports also give you an option to export them as XLS files if needed. The next on the list are task reports. These reports provide a consolidated view of all tasks in your project based on the status, milestone, priority, owner, and even completion percentage. There are also user-specific advanced rules that you could view, and you also have an option to customize these reports based on the metrics that you need. And these reports could also be viewed in different charts as well if needed. And you are also given an option to export these reports as PDFs. Next are the issue reports. The issue reports are pretty similar to the task reports. They give you deep insights onto the status of the issue. Issues can be analyzed based on numerous parameters, such as status, assignee, reporter, escalation, severity, and so on. These reports could also be viewed in different charts, just like the task reports. You could choose them from here. And you also have an option to export these reports as PDFs. Blueprints are next on the list. A blueprint lets you automate tasks by setting up workflows. It helps you define and design a workflow to automate your processes in an organized manner. The main components of a blueprint are statuses and transitions. A status indicates what stage a task is in at a particular point in the workflow, while a transition is a link between 2 statuses and allows a task to move from one status to another. Now let's access a blueprint by going to Setup, Task Automation, and Blueprint. I already have a blueprint set up, so we'll see how that works. This is the blueprint we use for our social media promotions. Content review and design review are the processes that are followed before a post is scheduled and a task is closed. All the white boxes that you see here are the statuses of the task, and the gray ones are the transitions that link 2 different statuses. A task is always open by default. So when you start working on the task and you submit a content for review, it goes to the submit for review transition, and the status of the task would automatically be moved to content review. And if the content is unapproved, it would go back to open, and this loop would go on until the content is approved. And once the content is approved, it goes to the design phase, where you start working on the video and the image for the post. And when you submit an image for approval, it would go to the image proposal transition and goes to the image iteration status. And if the image is approved, it would go to the creative rendered status. But what if the image is not approved? You could add a transition to make sure that the status goes back to the design phase. You could do that like this. And now you could name the transition image unapproved. And these transitions let you decide what should happen before, during, or after a transition. So in this case, if the image is not approved, you could make sure that a notification is triggered to you about it. And in some cases, if you want to change the assignee of the task before a transition, you could do that. And during a transition, if you want to update a field or add an attachment to the task, you could do that too. And similarly, you could add another transition for the video as well. And once both the video and image are approved, the post could be scheduled and it would go through the transition uploaded on social media before the task is closed. And once you get all the transitions and statuses right, you could publish your blueprint. Next is the timesheet. There are 3 different ways you could track your work hours in Zoho Projects. One is through the tasks detail page that we discussed about earlier. The other is through the global timer that's present here. This lets you select the task that you're working on and start the timer directly from here. And if you're stepping out for a break or working on a different task, you could pause the timer. And once you're done working on this task, you could also end the timer from here. And this would enter all your log hours directly to the timesheet. And the third option is to enter your log hours from the timesheet itself. This gives you options to enter daily login hours or weekly login hours. You could enter your login hours by clicking here. Select the task that you worked on, enter the hours that you worked on, and also select if an invoice is generated or if it's in progress, and click on Add. This would add your time entry directly here, and all your records would be available. You also have 3 different views available for the timesheets. The list view, which we have right now, the grid view, and the calendar view. And you also have a filter option to view the time logs of specific users or specific teams if needed. The timesheet also gives the admin options to accept or reject the time entries. If you're an admin, you could accept the time entries from here or even reject them if needed. And if you want to enable the approval process, you could do that by going to Settings, Portal Configuration, Task and Timesheet, and Timesheet Setting. You could enable the approval process here and a bunch of other settings as well if they are needed. Next is forums. With forums, you can post a topic and let your teammates share their views to know the exact requirements to start a new project or have a discussion about an ongoing issue. Here's a sample forum. To create a new forum post, you could do that by clicking on New Forum Post, give it a title, a description, select the category that you want to assign it to, select if it's a Q&A post, a sticky post, or an announcement, and even add the users that you want to notify about this forum. Next is the Project Specific Users module. This feature lets you add specific users to specific projects. Sometimes you need users to have restricted access to certain projects and extensive access to different projects. You could do that using this feature. If you have a user already in your portal but not a part of this project, you could add them from here. And if you want to add a completely new user, you could do that too. And you also have an option to view profile permissions from here. Different profiles come with different permissions. There are portal level permissions, project level permissions, and even module level permissions. And these permissions could be customized based on the profiles that you create. Next are the integrations. Zoho's secret for success has always been offering tight integrations with as many in-house and third-party applications as possible. And with Zoho Projects, it's no different. With a wide range of in-house and third-party integrations, Projects is one of the most integrated project management tool available and can be a perfect fit for your work ecosystem. To check out the available integrations, go to Settings and Marketplace. Lastly, we have the global modules at the top. There's a global search, which lets you search through all the modules of all the projects that you're running. And then there's a global timer that we talked about earlier, which lets you track all the tasks that you're working on. And there's the global notification center. And the global add button, which lets you add all activities directly from here. This version of Zoho Projects also comes with a lot of new themes, which include the newly designed image and art themes. But the best of all, this version comes with an eye-catching dark mode that helps you reduce your eye strain and make it easier to stay focused on your work. You can enable the themes from here. And down below are our help resources and support contacts. And we also have both Android and iOS applications, and even Gmail and Chrome extensions that you could use. I hope this webinar was helpful. Please check out all the features that we discussed and let us know if you need any assistance. Have a good day and many happy projects.